Hey everyone, my guest today is Erich Bergen. Erich is currently starring on Broadway in Boop, the musical. He's also known for his performance as Blake Moran on the TV show Madam Secretary and for his portrayal of Bob Gaudio? Guido? How do you say it?
Well, the first one was Blake Moran, and
Oh,
the
Blake Moran, sorry.
Blake Moran, Madam Secretary, and
Yeah.
Bob Gaudio, audio with a G.
Gaudio in the Clint Eastwood film Jersey Boys, reprising his performance from the stage production of the hit musical. On Broadway, he also starred in Waitress and Chicago. He was also seen on TV in Bull, The Good Fight, Gossip Girl, and more. As a producer and director, Erich has spearheaded many live, virtual, and television events, including working with NBC, CNN, President Obama, Clive Davis, Glenn Close, Michael Kors, and other high profile icons and outlets. You can find him on Instagram at Erich Bergen, and that's Erich Bergen. Um, Erich Bergen, you are
Yeah.
so ridiculously talented in so many ways in every lane you travel. Before we get to, and all day, all I say to everyone is boop because I
Oh, you
love.
you saw it.
I saw it and
Oh
got
my
to
gosh.
give Jerry Mitchell the hugest hug afterwards and just tell
Yeah.
him how much joy his show is bringing. Erich, before we get to today, can we travel backwards in time a little bit? Because I want to understand when you understood that this thing was going to be a career, this thing that you had all this natural talent for. When did you sing for the first time? What was your first Broadway show? And who was in the house growing up with you, where you lived as small Erich? Go.
Go. I don't think I ever thought about anything other than doing this. I was definitely an odd child. I grew up, born and raised here in Chelsea, in New York City, and my parents met doing this thing that you may have heard of called est, which was very of that time. I think it's kind of become, it's changed and become something like Landmark Forum, or I think that's what it's called now, something like that. It's like not quite self-help, but very self-empowering, using presentation and art and they were also part of this thing called the Mastery at the Actors Institute, which was kind of in the same vein. And they either met at Est or at the Actors Institute, one of the two. But my dad had a cabaret act at the Duplex. He opened with Sondheim's Everybody Says Don't, and then went into Barry Manilow's Even Now. I always tell that because I have sung both of those songs as well in my concerts. Um, so I grew up in a house in the mid 80s in an artist loft in New York City. Um, and I remember Keith Haring on the street drawing when I was a kid and drawing on the subway. Um, I was always around I mean, Chelsea, 1980s New York City, it was a very, very specific time. And it surrounded me. It was, the early days of MTV on television. So I was growing up with things like Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which I loved, but as an only child that was surrounded by this kind of art and music. There was always music in our house. My parents were both music obsessive. Um, I discovered MTV on TV somehow. And one of my first kind of creative memories was I saw the music video for We Are the World, which of course had all those different singers in it. And I kind of got this party trick I developed where I would imitate all of the voices in We Are the World. You know, Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Steve Perry, Michael Jackson. Like I would do all the voices, and I at my parents' dinner parties, my poor parents' friends had to sit through 4-year-old me doing an imitation of every single voice in We Are the World.
And Cyndi Lauper.
And Cyndi Lauper, who famously, while she was recording, had to take off all of her bangles and jewelry because it was making too much noise on the microphone. And I imitated that moment as well. So I was a person who would see something that I was interested in, and then I would imitate it so much so that I was obsessed with Michael Jackson. And there was a video of Michael Jackson performing Man in the Mirror live. It was clearly, as an adult, we know this, recorded over the course of several performances. He was wearing different outfits in on different nights that they recorded this performance. I didn't, as a 3-year-old, I didn't know from editing. So when I would recreate this performance in the loft growing up, I would be changing jackets mid-song, mid-line, because I was just recreating what I saw. I didn't understand that this was editing. Um, but I was always obsessed with putting on the show. It wasn't always that I had to be the performer. I always just wanted to be responsible for putting on the show, and I was the only one around, so I put myself in. But I'll never forget when Michael Jackson did the Super Bowl. I was so obsessed with the concert, the performance, how the stage got into the middle of the field in 7 minutes, all those different things. So I rebuilt it using Playmobil and Lego, and I filmed it all with my video camera, recreating the camera shots, how they did it, setting the music to it. My mom got me an early piece of video editing equipment, which was all done with, like, the infrared that's on remotes, and it was using VCRs. Um, she could tell, both my parents could tell that I was very into making the show happen at whatever it took. And my mom really understood the equipment side of things. She was an art director, and she came from uh, you know, art direction, putting together full photo shoots and then designing it for catalogs and magazines. So she would buy me the equipment to do these things. She got me a Porta Studio, which was like a 4-track recorder with a cassette tape that we bought at Manny's Music on 48th Street. And my dad really encouraged the live performance of it all. My dad was very much into getting me into, school groups and programs and places to perform. So I think the two of their combined energy of not pushing me, but supporting, really noticing and seeing me at 3 years old, 4 years old, whatever it was, they could see what my interest and, frankly, obsession was and still is. But they could see it so clearly then, and they supported that. And they gave me the tools to enhance that and develop that, as opposed to uh, they didn't push me at all. And they also didn't push me away from it, right? There was an attempt by my father to get me more into sports, um, which did not go well. Although I appreciate it now for sure. Um, but I was very clearly obsessed with what I was obsessed with, and that was pop music, um, music videos, live performance. My first concert ever, when I was 4 years old, my parents brought me to go see Whitney Houston at Madison Square Garden in 1989, which was just up the block. It was just up the block from where we lived. I mean, literally just walked up 7th Avenue, 14 blocks, and we were at Madison Square Garden. So I was, you want to talk about luck? That's the definition of luck. I was born into, we didn't have money, but we had a lot of love, and we had a lot of so we had a lot of understanding, and both of my parents are obsessive over the things that they love. They're both obsessive personalities. And I mean that in a positive way. And they understood my obsession, and they were able to cater to that in a positive way. So I was very, very, very lucky. Um, and I was in an after school program, theater program, when I was 9 years old, and there was a youth talent manager who would go to this program and look for new talent. And she discovered me when I was 9 years old, and she went up to my parents and said, "I'm really interested in working with your son." And they said, "No, no, no, not yet. We're not doing that." And the next year, she came back. I was still in that theater program. She came back and he said, "All right, he's 10 years old now. Let's, we'll have a meeting." We had a meeting. I signed with that manager, and I was instantly I started I started going on auditions, and I started doing a lot of at that time I had braces and acne, so there was a lot of voiceover auditions for a
Double
long
threat.
time. A double, that's exactly right. Uh, For a long time, I was the kid who said all parts sold separately in tons of voiceovers. There was lots of like fruit roll-ups and fruit by the foot. I remember those specifically. And then I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't really know from acting. I didn't know from theater. Um, when I was 10, my mom brought me to see my first Broadway show, which was Big, the musical, the musical version of the Tom Hanks Penny Marshall film. Um, and I loved it because there were kids my age in the show doing, singing, dancing on stage. And all of a sudden it felt tangible. It felt available because it didn't feel like something I had to wait to be an adult to do. It was right in front of me. There were kids my age doing it on stage. And that was very, very impactful for me. That summer, I went to Stage Door Manor for the first time, which, for those that don't know, is basically a summer theater camp. We called it a performing arts training center, but it's theater camp. Um, and I was up there for 7 years. Um, and it changed my life. My whole circle of friends to this day, my best friends in the entire world are are from there, and they have a really great list of alumni. I was up there with Natalie Portman and Mandy Moore, and right before me was Zach Braff. I was there with Sebastian Stan. So they I still say to this day, Stage Door was my real training more than any other thing that I've been a part of, whether it be college or anything. Stage Door was really where I learned to be the best version of me. And so that was that. That was my summers were spent at Stage Door, and my falls were spent trying to get through school and kind of flunking out and not really caring about school or grades or any of that, and auditioning after school. And I eventually, one time, I went into an audition very early on. I think it was the same year when I was 10 years old. I went into an audition at Simon and Schuster for Goosebumps audiobooks, and the producer said he called my manager and he said, he's not right for this one. By the way, I he actually did hire me for another Goosebumps audiobook a little bit later. But at that one, he said, he's not right for this, but I've written this musical called The Sick Boy, which is loosely based on the story of Ryan White. And we are doing it at my off Broadway youth theater company this fall. And I'd like him to come in for that. And I did. And that was my first time on stage in New York City, was doing this musical. And what was great about that theater company, it's called New York Youth Theater, was that it was kids playing kids working with adults. So it was all the programming, all the shows were geared towards being family entertainment and for kids and led by kids, but there were working adults in the show. So I got that professional like experience very early on, and that was a big part of my training as well. And I was there with Zoe Saldana was in that theater program with me. So it's been it's been a career that has been ongoing since I was 10. I never stopped, I never went away, I never took a break. This career, this person that you're talking to right now is, I've been doing this since I was 10, and it feels like yesterday, and it it just all feels like, one long path. I have known what I've wanted to do essentially from day one. I was very lucky to start with people, my parents, who, understood it and were able to encourage it and support it emotionally. Um, and somehow I found my way through, and I'm still doing it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could hit stop right now. Um, because that was the most satiating introduction to someone who I've admired from afar as a fan for a long time and sort of wondered, what's his journey? Like, what's his story? Um, we have some friends in common, and you're one of the most beloved people. Like, anytime someone interacts with you or works with you, they just want to do it again. Like, that's a very unique thing to just kind of not just have fans who love what you do on stage, on screen, but like fans within the rehearsal room. And I'm understanding as I listen to you I want to kiss both your parents on the cheeks and say, can you do a master class? May I ask, are your parents still with us?
They are. They're very much. They are very much with us.
Okay.
They are very much. They can often be found at the Broadhurst Theater where Boop is currently playing. They have not. They've been divorced since I was 5 years old, and they have been at every last show, opening night, sitting together with their significant others. My dad and my stepfather, through the early part of COVID, would play golf together every Thursday or something like that. So I have a very unique situation. I'm very, very lucky. And it's true. I mean, you're joking around when you say they could teach a master class, but I've thought about it. I've thought about one day they should write a book because my dad also has a kind I have a kind of niece situation. There's my dad's partner, they've been together for about 20 years, but they're not married. And her daughter has a daughter. But her daughter is no longer with the father of her child. So my dad has kind of there's a grandfather situation, and but also a little bit of a a male figure father, whatever you want to call it. So he has adopted the name Faux with his granddaughter. I think but I've going back to what I was saying, I have often thought about them. They should write a book together, um, because listen, I did grow up with privilege, not really financial privilege. I'm not I didn't inherit anything. They lived comfortably in New York at a time when you could live comfortably in New York. But what I inherited was all the great lessons and all the great I inherited a lot of love and a lot of encouragement and a lot of support and a lot of understanding. They should write a book on how to do that because I think a lot of people struggle with. I've always hated that term broken family. I remember it wasn't until I was a teenager that I looked up what the definition of what that meant, and it meant from a divorced family. But I thought that
Right.
was an awful word to use, the word broken. There was certainly nothing broken about my family. My family is wonderful. I mean, they're a bunch of weirdos, but they're my family. I love them, and we've figured it out. So that to me is not broken.
I know, but Eric, when I asked you to share your story, and it's not until like 20 minutes in that you happen to mention that your parents got divorced when you were really little, that's usually like for most people, that's bearing the lead in
Right,
a
right,
certain way. And it's fascinating to me, like, that's where most people's trauma would begin.
right.
And the fact that for you, that is an afterthought. And so I wasn't really kidding when I called it a master class, but excuse me, but there is something, I'm a parent, and so, we were talking about Ben Platt before you and I started recording because you
Yeah,
produced this during the pandemic, this virtual Seder was one of the
yeah.
first things that I heard of you putting on a producer hat for. And again, when you look at the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, you already had those 10,000 hours when you were, 5 years old, putting together this huge Super Bowl halftime show in your living room.
Yeah,
So even just being comfortable with technology and already knowing how to use all of these things that come with our computer that most of us are like, I don't know what that button is for.
right.
But this idea of, I bring up Ben because his mom, the thing I always say about Julie Platt is you ask any one of her children who her favorite is, they all think they are. And that is a skill set when you have kids, whether you have one or five, who have like huge passions.
Yeah.
And for each one of them, and in your case, you to feel like I I feel attended to and respected and encouraged as a parent. That's all you want to do, right? So I've used selfishly this podcast every interview when I ask about like who was in the house when you grew up. It has been such an extraordinary like value add in my life to kind of hear both pros and cons of how people who have managed to make their passion into their career, how much who was in their house growing up impacted that.
Yeah.
And your story is really unique and beautiful. I want to talk a little bit about your singing voice because as I mentioned, I got to see Boop and I saw you in Waitress and I just was thinking, "Oh my God, you're Catherine McPhee was in Waitress with you and her husband wrote Boop." And I just thought, "Oh, I wonder if that was even something you guys discussed when you were doing Waitress. Was it already something you'd been workshopping before you worked with her?"
No, no, I didn't know Catherine or David. I didn't know any of them personally before stepping into Waitress. I met David, I'm pretty sure I met David for the first time while I was doing Waitress with Kat, and I met her there, and I met him there backstage one time, and then David and I got to know each other just from that, and we just kind of clicked. And I've always been a huge fan of his, especially loving pop music growing up. Definitely one of my idols. um I really connected with him, I guess it had to have been right before COVID, or really when COVID started. The very first thing that I did in COVID as a producer was that Rosie O'Donnell live stream, which was on March 22nd of 2020. It was the first kind of big celebrity-based fundraiser, and we brought back the Rosie O'Donnell show for one night. And Kat and Dave came on the show, and they performed. And I just stayed in touch with David, and then I started working a bunch with Mark Johnson, and Mark is David's manager. And what happened was Mark came to me and said, uh, I know a lot of these big nonprofits who are struggling with what to do this fall when they would normally have their big gala. And David was often involved in a lot of these. He really lent his time and talent to a lot of major nonprofits, including his own David Foster Foundation, which does incredible work. But Mark came to me and said, would you be able to work with some of these nonprofits and find a way for them to do their fall gala virtually? Because I know they're really struggling with what to do this fall for their fundraising time. So with Mark, I went in there and we produced a bunch of large events. And that's also how we started working with Clive Davis. We met. Mark had known Clive obviously through David, but that's how I met Clive, putting together the virtual Carousel of Hope ball, which we did in the fall of 2020. And then we started working with Clive directly. Mark and I produced his Grammy party in 2021. He's famous for having this Grammy party the night before the Grammys. It goes back to 1975, and so we did it virtually for him in 2021, and that ended up turning into producing his big Central Park concert that he did on the Great Lawn, which unfortunately got rained out halfway through Barry Manilow singing Copacabana. But we put together this big. It was the first time I produced for in person off of Zoom, and we sold it to CNN, and CNN did an all day broadcast, and there was a whole thing about that. But I so we produced a bunch of events and stuff in that world, and Mark came to me, and I had known about Boop, but Mark said to me, we need to start to get some of the promotional materials ready for Boop, really for backers, for people who wanted to invest in the show moving forward. And so I put together some of those early because I've, a great team of video artists and graphic artists and editors and lighting people. So Mark called me for some help putting that stuff together. And so I did. I never thought anything about being in the show. And then I went to go see a workshop. They had done a workshop presentation of the show. And at that time, the part that I currently play was played by Andy Carl, who was a friend of mine from many years. He'd been in Jersey Boys and a million other shows. He's one of the most talented people I know. But he was playing this part, and I thought, I mean, he was so genius in this part. I thought, you know, I didn't think anything of it. I never see myself in something that already exists. I don't have that ability. It was like when I went to see Jersey Boys for the first time on Broadway. I brought my dad, and my dad said to me, he said, "You'd be great in that part." And I thought, I no, I did I just didn't get it. It's the part that I ended up playing 6 months later. But anyway, I saw this presentation of Boop, and I thought the show was really cute and fun. And they obviously had work to do. It was a workshop presentation, but I knew with that group of people, David Foster and Jerry Mitchell and Susan Birkenhead and Bob Martin, they were going to get there. And I thought Andy will be great in this, and I can't wait to come see it. And I'm happy to produce your promo videos for you. And then Mark called me a bunch of months later and said, "Hey, Andy is doing something else that he wants to do, and the schedule is not lining up, so he can't do the show. Would you be interested in playing that part?" I said, "Really? I so did not see myself in this part." Um, and that's the part that I ended up I'm currently playing on Broadway. So you talk about who you know. It is who you know, but it's not just who you know. I mean, it's right place, right time, and I don't know. A lot of it's luck.
Well,
But
that's why I want to talk to you. Yes, yes to all of that, but your voice is is so beautiful to listen to, but also you just seem like such a naturally strong singer to me. I mean, in Waitress and in Chicago and in Jersey Boys and in this show, um, you know, these are big song and dance numbers, right? And so you have to be able not just to be like have a great voice and be able to move, but like to sustain an 8 show a week. You have to be like a certain kind of workhorse and be able to have that power all the time. And so I want to talk a little bit about your beautiful voice, and you're an incredible dancer to watch. I don't know how you feel as a dancer. I can't tell you how many people I think are like unbelievable. They're like, oh, it's all bells and like it's all smoke and mirrors. And I'm like, so where do you
oh,
see yourself in all of those things? And also like the training. Did you ever train vocally?
well, first of all, thank you. Second of all, it is all smoke and mirrors. I It's so funny you say that about my voice because there is nothing that stresses me out more than singing. I love singing, but I've always thought of myself as someone I want to share this song with you. Like I want you to hear this song. I love it. I've never thought of myself as someone who can sing. Um, I when I do my usually I'm a really good editor. I'm a really really good editor, and I know what songs sound not good in my voice, and I know what song. There are some people who you can hand them a song, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll sing it." You think of people like in the Broadway world, you think of people like Shoshana Bean and Aaron Tveit and the wonderful Gavin Creel, and how they could open their mouths and you know just golden sounds come out of their voice. I'm so not that person. I've performed in concerts. I've done my concerts all over the country. I did a run at the Cafe Carlisle, but to pick the songs that I felt comfortable doing night after night, I mean, it is so specific. My voice to me is not my calling card. It stresses me out more than anything. And I love singing, but I wish I had the ability to just sing anything. And I know it's all in my head. I also know that if I had studied voice and had stuck to it more, I would probably be, well, I know I'd be a much better singer, but I would have less stress about singing. I did study with a few singing teachers growing up, and I've along the way I've also worked with Bob Garrett in Los Angeles and the wonderful Liz Kaplan here in New York. Um, I've been bad about staying on top of my voice lessons because it really is a muscle, right? And you have to keep it moving. As a dancer, um, uh, no, I'm Gumby, and I my limbs are I've what I feel comfortable moving, but I would not feel comfortable saying I'm a dancer. In my mind, again, I'm imitating something I saw. What's great about what I do in Boop is that what's great about my character in Boop is that I have the ability to make fun of both singing and dancing. So my dancing is supposed to be odd and a bit creepy in this show. And that helps because that I can do very easily. Um, Thank you for saying that. I don't see myself as either one of those two things. I don't feel comfortable doing it. What I feel comfortable doing, what I feel most comfortable doing is making a fool out of myself. I I feel comfortable being the butt of a joke. Self-deprecation, and that's what we did a lot on Madam Secretary. My character, we were able to have a lot of fun with the self-deprecation, and I've continued to do that, especially in Boop. I think being the butt of a joke is a place where I'm comfortable, and I, I've been able to use my kind of like lankiness and being, all legs and one arm that's significantly longer than the other. I've been able to use that to my advantage. My heroes are Marty Short, Sid Caesar, people like that. That's where I find myself most comfortable. And I always, Robin Williams, and I always lean on that. I've never been comfortable being any kind of leading man or anything like that. What makes me happiest is nailing a laugh and letting the audience in on I think I come off to people as very confident, and I think I come off to people as pompous, and that's where I'm able to turn their what they already think about me. When I can turn that on its head and get the laugh, that's what makes me the happiest.
Wait, do you think people, when you say people think I'm pompous, in terms of characters you play, or do you think there's something that you do socially? Because we all have our anxiety covers.
Yeah.
Is pompous sort of a like factory setting that you
Yeah.
default to?
It's both. I think I'm tall. My hair is usually quite big. I have a very loud speaking voice. My girlfriend has to constantly remind, say indoor voice, um, because my natural speaking voice, like right now, I'm sure that my neighbor has, closed a window just doing this interview.
Or subscribe to the podcast.
Or
Let's hope the latter.
click to subscribe. That's right. Um, uh, and socially, I do think I put on this. I walk into a room. I've always said like confidence is also fake confidence, right? Because to exude confidence, you not only have to have it, but you also have to know how to show it, right? That's not for all people. There are some people who just have that inner confidence and they don't talk at all and they're just quietly confident. And I'm very jealous of those people. I am not one of those people. I'm faux confident. I know how to show confidence without actually feeling it. And that is my defense mechanism.
Right.
I know how to show you confidence. I don't necessarily know how to have it. There are things that I'm definitely confident about. If you hand me a microphone and say the show can't start for another half hour due to tech problems, go fill, and there's 2,000 people, I know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I feel confident that I can do it. Um, Walking into a party with 20 people and there's only one person I know, I will hide in the bathroom for the entire party, and I've done it. But that showing confidence, that hi, that thing, whatever that is, I don't have to know if that's actually what it is, but that's what it is in my head. I That is a defense mechanism, and I know how to do that really, really well. And I think because of that, people think I have some pompous. And I've also, you said earlier that we have mutual friends and they all say wonderful things about me. That's lovely. I have a list of people who don't. And I think that's because in a workspace when I'm pushed to a place of not being comfortable, I'm very protective of myself and I'm very much this is what I need to do this job correctly. And if that's not being heard or listened to, I get very defensive and I get very, I think that confident thing kicks back in. And I think, and people have said to me, like, you came off as being a dick or you came off as being pompous. And I always try to remind myself of that because I'm not. I'm usually scared.
Mm.
And it just comes off as that. Uh, so, I always have that in the back of my mind. I always have in the back of my mind to be like overly nice when I walk into a room. It's, it's also that other
Well,
thing.
you're doing some color correction, right? Is
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
right
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
to
And
use a
also,
film term,
right. And it's that classic thing too of like how many people do you know as soon as you get any little bit of fame or notoriety, what's the one question that anyone who's outside of the business asks about you? Are they nice? Oh, are they nice? Or the response from someone else is, "Oh, and he's such a nice person," right? "Oh, he's so nice." So that's the first thing. There's always an assumption that if you are an actor who has gotten even the slightest bit of notoriety, somehow there's the question of, are they nice? So
right?
I try to get on top of that because it's like, yes, I'm nice. Please know me as nice.
Yes. That's so funny because there's probably, other than the world of performance, there's probably no other vocation that people lead with that question, right?
Right. You'd
Like,
think like a doctor would be the first person that you would ask, or
right,
other than do they have a,
a
license?
diploma.
Right. They would he would say, are they nice? No, you don't ask that. It's only after you see the doctor that you go,
Right.
they weren't very nice.
Yeah,
Why
I wish
would you
their
ask them
bedside manner was
beforehand?
better.
Right,
Right.
right,
But you
right.
still go back. I mean,
Still go back.
it's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I was talking with Jerry Mitchell, your director, just moments before you and I started to talk today, and I said, do you have anything you want me to share on the podcast with Eric from you? Because I was like, Eric's coming on. He's like, oh my God, I love him. And I said, do you want me to share anything? And this is a quote from your director and our mutual pal, Jerry Mitchell. Quote, now does he believe me when I say, point to your number 5678? It's funny. Do you want to respond to that? Can you explain that to my global audience?
Well, so like I do, that he's uh not even lightly using this term genius, but you oftentimes with the word genius, you end up with very complicated people who are, have their isms, and I'm sure he does, but I haven't seen them. He really is the nicest man in the world, and I don't know how you put up a giant multi-million dollar musical, any of them, let alone Boop, and not have a breakdown. And he does it with such ease, kindness, and creates this fun room. I've worked a lot in my life. I've worked with a lot of different directors. I've never seen someone get up a show so easily and so quickly on such a massive scale. So his gift is the ability to do that. It's been a joy working with him, and I can't wait to do it again. Um, and I've been wanting to do
That
so.
that being said,
That being said, no, no, no. I've been wanting to work with him since I saw the final preview of Hairspray when I was a teenager,
yeah,
and
the
it was one of the
best.
greatest nights I've ever had in the theater. And I thought I've got to be in a Jerry Mitchell musical one day. Um, what he's referring to is at the end of the show, my character has ended up in jail, and I'm wearing a. I walk out on stage. You don't know that I've ended up in jail, but you learn that when in the final number, which is this big celebration of color, I walk on stage in an orange jumpsuit, which gets a big laugh because my character deserves to end up in jail.
We've
And
been rooting for that.
you've been rooting for that the whole time. And the inmate number on the costume says 5678. It's subtle, meaning you can see it, but your eye doesn't go there. And
Right.
we were doing Boop in Chicago out of town at the end of 2023. And even here in New York, early in previews and rehearsals, I did something different. There's this moment I come in and I say this line and I say how I should be the mayor, not this woman who ended up being the mayor. And the whole cast boos me. And I used to do something like, oh, come on, lighten up. I just had some filler line. And then at one point, we were in previews here in New York, and he said, say 5, 6, 7, 8. He's like, "So it's on your thing already." And I thought, okay, I'll try that. Didn't realize if there was anything wrong with what I was doing. He just said, let's try 5, 6, 7, 8. I was like, okay. So I put in 5, 6, 7, 8, and it basically counted everyone in. Nothing really changed. They booed. I said 5, 6, 7, 8. We continued on. And he said, we did a few performances of that. And then he said to me, point to it and say 5, 6, 7, 8. Point to 5, 6, 7, 8, your inmate number on your chest. And I thought, anytime I grew up learning indicating ruins acting, right? Let the audience see it. Don't point and indicate. Don't give it away. And so in my head, I'm thinking, oh, Jerry, you're finally wrong. Finally,
I've been waiting.
finally, you have had an idea that is not going to work. Finally, I have found one flaw in you, and it's that you had a bad
Today's
idea.
the day.
Today's the
Today's the
day.
day, my friend.
And so I thought to myself, the only thing I wasn't going to fight him on it. So all I could think was, yes, Jerry, and I'm going to do it so big tonight. I didn't say this, but I just said yes, I'll try it. And all I thought was, I'm going to do it so big because of that classic thing, right? If you don't agree with what the director is saying, and you know you're right, do it full out, in the words of Jerry Mitchell, to show that it's wrong, so that the director can see it didn't work. We'll try something else. So that night, I did it. I pointed at my chest. I said, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have never, ever gotten a laugh that big in my entire career. And it's every night now. So I was dead wrong. Jerry Mitchell was so right. And I don't know what the moral of the story is other than hire Jerry Mitchell to direct your next show. But he's right. He always sees big picture, and he knows how to make an audience happy. And to be one of his methods of doing that is a very it's a huge honor, and it's just really fun to do every night.
Tell me before, some people have these, some people don't. Do you have any pre-show rituals that you're superstitious if for any reason they can't happen?
No, no rituals, nothing like that. I do believe in the power of music. I like to have music backstage in the vibe of what the character, kind of the same way we use music at the gym, whatever it is that pumps you up. I
Right.
usually try to stay in the vibe of the show. So there's a lot of Sinatra backstage because it just keeps that swing jazz feeling that is helpful for my character. Um, uh, what I don't like is I like the camaraderie. I like the community of backstage. I like going to dress rooms, like saying hi. I like the hang. It's the best part about doing any of this is the hang.
Hmm.
The fellow people. Um, that's the best part. So it's not so much rituals as it is just like keeping good vibes, good energy backstage, and checking in with everyone. And this is all I ever wanted to do. So anytime I get to do it, I thank my lucky stars that I'm in the building. All I ever wanted to be was in the building. That's why when I was a teenager, when I was at home, like in the summer, spring break, around college time, um, I just wanted to get in the frickin' building. I just wanted to get in the theater, and I didn't know how. So I got a job selling t-shirts at Broadway shows. I worked at the merch booth. And what that enabled me to do was, first of all, I got to see the show for free every night. All the other people working would, when the show started, they would go to Starbucks, they'd go up to the break room or whatever. I just watched the show every night. I worked at the Bernadette Peters revival of Gypsy, which Jerry choreographed. I sold T-shirts at Phantom, the original color purple. I worked at Wicked for a long time. Uh, so the ability to see the show and the ability to see the actors on stage warming up before they open the house, it was magic to me. It still is. I still can't believe, every night you've seen the show, so you know I'm not in Act One a lot of Boop, and the parts of Act One that I'm not in, I walk out the stage door, I go through the lobby, and I go into the back of the house, and I stand behind the audience every night and I watch the show.
Well, now a lot of audience members are going to be craning their heads to
Oh,
see.
it's not it's very boring back there, but you're much better off looking forward. But I don't
Guys,
know. Again,
listen, you can take a peek, but then look forward,
take a peek, I'll
please.
wave. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yes. Um, do you feel like in terms of walking down the street, is Madam Secretary the thing that people what's the is it Blake Moran? Is it Bob Gaudio? Like who's the guy?
I think it's yeah, I think it's all of them. I mean, I think it depends where I am and what the situation is. I think on when I leave the stage door these days, um, because it's the Broadway folks. I get a lot of people who say they loved Waitress, funny enough. And there's obviously Madam Secretary and Jersey Boys people too, but it really depends on the situation. I think Madam Secretary was obviously a big one. Jersey Boys was a big one. I was on the final season of Bull for I think 5 episodes. So that one shows up a lot. People really uh responded to that show. They really loved that show. The funny thing is, Madam Secretary Bull, they're all on the same network as The Good Wife and The Good Fight. And I was only on one episode of Good Fight, but people often say, "Oh, they love me so much on The Good Wife." I'm like, that's not me. But you just
Nope.
kind of say, "Yes, I know what you
But
mean."
my God, the power of network television. You realize if you've done cable for a long time and you have this wonderful niche audience, you do like an episode of, The Equalizer, and you're like,
Right.
I'm the most famous
Yeah.
lady in the world.
I listen, if I'm in an airport that is not in New York or Los Angeles, people will come up and they're usually about Madam Secretary or Bull. Yeah, I mean it's a very and in the case of Madam Secretary, we got so lucky because it was a network show, but it felt like doing a play every week because it
So
was all
good.
theater people's.
Yeah,
Chip Daly and Jelko Ivanek and BB Newirth and Patina Miller and Sebastian Arcellus and Jeffrey Aaron. I mean, everyone except for Taya was really a theater person.
right.
So it was we had the greatest time doing that.
Show tunes in between every
There were
take,
lots of
right?
show tunes. We put show tunes into the show. Yeah,
Oh my God,
we filmed it here in New York. So
dreamy.
it was very dreamy. They all showed up. I was doing Waitress on Broadway at the same time as Madam, and they all came. Everyone came, and they came with like sashes that said my name on it. It was a very supportive group. They still are. Taya brought her daughter to opening night of Boop. So it's I have incredible memories of that time.
That is amazing. It's so funny. I just want to go back to something you said about like what a good editor you are in terms of the songs you choose to sing. And I'm like, right, but I saw you in Chicago and Waitress and Boop. These are not things you got to choose. You were hired to do them. Um, and I just feel like it's really interesting hear you describe how you think of yourself and sort of how you filled those parts with so much truth and authenticity, so that my memory is that's the best sung, that's the best, danced, and you're like, I
Well,
guess.
let me just say this though. First of all, I appreciate that, but secondly, what I would
Sure.
also say is it's still an editing. It's still an edit. When you are an actor, especially one that is as hammy as I am, um, and I know how to get laughs from an audience, I there is that desire, especially take Chicago as an example. Chicago, I was like the 358th person to play Billy Flynn. There is a desire. Your brain goes to how do I make this better or different than someone else, right? I'm going to do it different. I have to fight that. And what makes me a good editor is fighting that, returning to the script and
Hmm.
not adding on, but trusting the material. There is a moment in Boop where you probably know what I'm talking about, where I kind of say something to the audience and that response every night, how much to milk it, how much not to, how much to move forward. That's editing live. Same
Hmm.
goes for Waitress. There was an ability to play and overdo some of the comedic beats. And I chose more often than not to return to the page. And same with Chicago. I am a vehicle for the text. And I often find that when you have great writing, say the line, you naturally are going to bring something to it that is interesting. It can't be boring, but riding that fine line is one that I pride myself on. So I'm always editing. Editing is sometimes live in the moment and fighting yourself as someone who loves comedy, as someone who knows how to get a laugh, fighting the push and just saying, keep the train on the track. So
Hmm.
I still think of it as editing.
Right. All right. Well, I want you to have some time for yourself today. So I will, as much as I want to keep you for hours and hours, um, is there a little known fact about Erich Bergen that you can share?
Um, a little known fact. I knew you were going to ask this, and I never came up with an answer. So I I don't. What have other people said? Can you give me an example of what some other people have said?
It's so funny, 460 episodes in. I let me think what comes to mind. So Nikki James, the wonderful Nikki M. James,
Of.
she cannot sleep without AirPods in her ear, listening to NPR all night. Like
I understand.
that's an
I understand.
example.
Okay,
Um,
I'll give you
do
I'll
you
give
listen
you
to NPR all night in your
I don't. I don't, but that's a good one. Okay,
That's an example.
I'll give you two.
Okay.
I'll double it. I'll give you two.
You are going to make up for not having one by
That's
giving me
right.
two.
That's
Bless
right.
you.
Okay, the first one is I can't stand melted cheese. I think it is the most disgusting, disturbing thing that I've ever had or seen, except for pizza. But it can't be pizza where the cheese is like melting off. The cheese has to be tight around the bread.
All right. It cannot be a dollar slice then.
Right. It has to be a perfectly done pizza where the cheese is not drippy, melty. I can't do that.
Okay.
Now, what I will say, I'll add in a little addendum that my girlfriend has turned me on to her grilled cheese sandwiches, and I don't know how she does it. What kind of cheese do you use? What kind of cheese do you use for the grilled cheese when you usually make it for me? Is it a Gruyere or Parmesan? I don't know what she does. It's only her grilled cheese that I've ever been able to eat. I don't understand why. It's a secret. She's trapped me. Um,
That is how you know
that's how you know.
when you're in love.
That's right. Uh,
That's it.
that's it. The other big secret, I don't even know if it's a little known secret. My real name is not Eric Bergen. My 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 real name is Andrew Reynolds. No, I'm kidding. My real name is Eric Lee Rosenberg. I was born Eric Lee Rosenberg. My mother is Allison Lee. My father is Gary Rosenberg. Although I think Wikipedia or somewhere online somebody showed me something that they they have my wrong parents listed. Unless there's something I don't know. But uh, my name is Eric Lee Rosenberg, and when I was on tour with Jersey Boys, started to become a problem because my name in the playbill and all that said Eric Bergen. I've been working under the name Eric Bergen when I changed it when I was 10 years old when I signed with my manager. But they started to buy my plane tickets for the tour under Eric Bergen, and I didn't have an ID. So it kept becoming a problem. I didn't have an ID that said that. So halfway through my time in Jersey Boys, in between my time doing the tour and doing Las Vegas, I went to the court downtown and I changed my name legally from Eric Lee Rosenberg to Eric Bergen. And that is when my father disowned me.
That little known fact.
Yes,
That's his
the
other
last
TikTok.
part's a joke, but kind of. No, I'm
Do
kidding.
and who do you, when you go to sleep at night, before you put your AirPods in to not listen to NPR, who are you?
Who am I?
Yeah.
I think that I nothing makes me happier than making people forget their troubles. I am an entertainer. I love entertaining. I believe in the power of entertainment. The word art scares me. I take what I do very seriously, but what I do is kind of ridiculous. I I I believe wholeheartedly in the power of entertainment. People don't wait outside stage doors for autographs because they like collecting autographs. They had an emotional connection to something they just saw, and it filled them whether they knew they needed it or not. But I believe wholeheartedly in entertainment, and I don't like people who I hate that my least favorite term in the world is guilty pleasure.
Mm.
As they people write things off as, you know, not substantial. They say it's my guilty pleasure. I don't know. I think that entertainment has a value in this world, and I think that if it changes you, if it does something to you, if it gives you a little bit of reprieve from your daily troubles, I think that has value.
Well, this has been so unbelievably joyous for me. And I'm so happy that we got to spend this time together. And I love you in the show. And I'm so proud of you and all the incredible accomplishments that you have and all of the things that you do to give back with God's Love We Deliver and just so many organizations that, if people look you up on Google or follow you at not Eric Rosenberg, at Eric Bergen on all the social medias, you'll
Yeah.
just see all the ways in which you're doing things to make the world better for people, not just as an entertainer, but as a real doer. So bless you. Thank you for coming on the podcast. This was so great, and I hope I see you soon.
Wait, in that spirit though, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
So you brought up God's Love We Deliver, and they're an organization that I love, and I do a lot of work for them, helping them put on their galas and their events. And last year we did this really fun event called Joan Rivers, a Dead Funny All-Star Tribute, and we put it on at the Apollo last fall, and it was a fundraiser for God's Love because Joan was, God's Love We Deliver's biggest champion. If you don't know about God's Love We Deliver, they are an organization that was created in 1985 that home delivers medically tailored meals to those in New York who need that, who are unable to cook or shop for themselves. And they've done over 40 million meals since 1985. And Joan was
Wow.
one of their biggest champions. So I put together along with Melissa Rivers, a tribute to Joan last fall. And we filmed it, and it's airing on NBC on May 13th, following the finale of America's Got Talent. And it's Nikki Glazer and Patton Oswalt and Tiffany Haddish. And oh my God, there's so many Chelsea Handler, there's so many people in this thing. And if you don't watch it on NBC on May 13th, um, it is going to be streaming on Peacock starting the next day in an uncut and uncensored version. And if you really want to laugh, and you can't make it to New York to see Boop, check out this Joan Rivers tribute. It's one of the um, I'm so proud to be a part of it. It's my first time producing for network television, and it turned out really, really incredibly. So, and it's a great fundraiser for God's Love. So, does a lot of good, makes you laugh, and I leave you with that.
Thank you, Eric. I will see you soon.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye.